Malik Carter sat at his desk, fingers gliding across his keyboard as he finalized yet another high-profile project ahead of schedule. His work ethic was unmatched. He was the kind of employee who stayed late to meet deadlines, mentored junior team members, and consistently delivered innovative solutions that saved the company both time and money. He wasn't just a worker, he was an asset. But despite his dedication and results, there was one undeniable truth. His contributions were often overlooked, dismissed, or outright claimed by others. At Westbridge Tech Solutions, a leading firm in software development and AI innovation, Malik had spent the last 6 years proving himself. He started as an intern fresh out of college, climbed the ranks with sheer grit, and had become a senior developer who practically ran the entire department. Yet while others with less experience and weaker performance were promoted, given raises, and recognized, Malik remained stagnant. The glass ceiling above him wasn't just about experience or merit, it was about race. And the man responsible for that was Richard Dawson. Richard, the department manager, embodied corporate racism wrapped in a polite but condescending tone. He never outright insulted Malik, never used slurs or made openly racist remarks. Instead, he excelled at subtle digs, microaggressions, and backhanded compliments. "That's a great idea, Malik," he would say in meetings, just before presenting Malik's suggestions as his own. "You're so articulate," he once told him, as if surprised that a black man could be well-spoken. "Maybe next time, you'll be ready for a bigger role," he often assured Malik, even as he handed promotions to less qualified white colleagues. The most frustrating part? Malik knew he had outperformed every single person Richard had ever promoted. The numbers didn't lie. His projects had the highest success rate, his leadership had strengthened the team, and even the executives above Richard had taken notice of Malik's work. But Richard was the one in charge of departmental promotions, and he made sure Malik never advanced beyond where he was. Despite the injustice, Malik kept his head up. He had been raised to believe that hard work would always pay off, that talent would always be recognized. But as the years passed and the pattern remained unchanged, he couldn't ignore the truth. In Richard's world, no matter how good he was, he would never be good enough. The final straw came on a Wednesday afternoon in the glass-walled conference room. Malik had requested a private meeting with Richard to discuss his long-overdue raise. Armed with spreadsheets, reports, and undeniable proof of his impact on the company, he confidently laid out his case. Richard barely glanced at the documents. He leaned back in his chair, fingers tapping the polished oak table as he sighed dramatically. "Malik, you're an excellent worker," he said in the same patronizing tone he always used. "But a raise, a promotion, I just don't think you're quite there yet." Malik's jaw tightened. "Richard, I've exceeded every target this year. My performance reviews are flawless, and my projects bring in more revenue than anyone else's." "I understand," Richard said, his voice dripping with faux sympathy. "But these things take time. You need to show more leadership, more initiative. You're valuable, Malik, but—" He paused, smirking. "You need to be patient." Patient. The word stung more than any outright insult could. Malik clenched his fists beneath the table. He had been patient. He had done everything right. But Richard had already decided that no matter how much Malik achieved, he would never be ready. As Malik walked out of the meeting, shoulders squared and heart pounding, he knew one thing. He was done waiting. Little did Richard know, by the next day, everything was about to change. The tension in the conference room was palpable. Malik Carter sat upright in his chair, his neatly organized documents spread out before him, each page a testament to his unwavering dedication to Westbridge Tech Solutions. His numbers spoke for themselves: record-high project success rates, revenue growth directly tied to his contributions, and glowing peer reviews. If anyone deserved a raise and a promotion, it was him. Richard Dawson, however, looked unimpressed. He leaned back in his leather chair, fingers tapping absent-mindedly against the polished oak table, his lips curling into a faint smirk. The moment Malik had requested this meeting, Richard already knew the answer he planned to give. Malik took a deep breath and started, his voice steady despite the knot in his stomach. Richard, I've been with the company for 6 years now. I've consistently led successful projects, improved workflow efficiency, and helped train new team members. The data here shows that my work has directly increased productivity and profitability. I believe I've more than earned a raise and a senior managerial position. He slid the neatly prepared report across the table. Richard barely glanced at it. Instead, he sighed dramatically and folded his hands together. Malik, he said, tilting his head slightly as if speaking to a child. I appreciate everything you do here. You're an important part of the team. Malik remained silent, waiting for the inevitable but. But, Richard continued, a rehearsed sorrow in his voice. I just don't think now is the right time. Malik furrowed his brow. Richard, I've been patient for years. I've watched others with less experience get promoted over me. I've done the work. What exactly is missing? Richard gave him a look, a condescending smirk masked as sympathy. It's not about work, Malik. It's about leadership. It's about vision. Malik narrowed his eyes. Leadership. I've led multiple projects from start to finish, and every one of them has exceeded expectations. Sure, Richard said with a dismissive chuckle. But leadership isn't just about numbers. It's about presence. It's about fitting into the company culture. You know what I mean? Malik felt his fingers tighten around the armrests of his chair. He knew exactly what Richard meant. It wasn't about numbers. It wasn't about performance. It was about something unspoken. Something that people like Richard never had to say outright. Malik didn't fit, not because he wasn't qualified, not because he didn't work hard, but because Richard couldn't see a black man in a leadership role at Westbridge Tech Solutions. I see, Malik said after a pause, forcing his expression to remain neutral. So, let me get this straight. You're saying I need to fit in more? Despite my record-breaking performance, my leadership on projects, and my contributions to the company's success? Richard's smirk deepened. It's not personal, Malik. You just have to trust the process. Be patient. Maybe in another year or two, we'll revisit this. Another year or two. Malik had heard that before. He had been patient. He had played the game, followed the rules, and done everything right. Yet here he was, once again, being told to wait, to prove himself even more, while others were handed promotions simply for existing in the right skin. Humiliation and frustration burned in his chest, but Malik didn't let it show. He refused to give Richard the satisfaction of seeing him defeated. Instead, he took a slow breath, collected his documents, and stood. Thank you for your time, he said evenly, meeting Richard's gaze. Richard nodded, already dismissing him in his mind. Of course. Keep up the great work. Malik walked out of the conference room, his jaw tight, his mind racing. This wasn't just another rejection. This was the moment he finally saw things for what they were. No matter how much he excelled, no matter how much he proved himself, Richard would never let him succeed. But that didn't mean he would stop pushing forward. Because what Richard didn't know, what no one knew, was that by the next day, everything was going to change. The office was buzzing. Something was happening, something big. Employees gathered in small clusters near their desks, murmuring in hushed voices as emails and Slack messages flew across the company. Malik Carter noticed the change in energy the moment he stepped into the office that morning. People who usually moved with purpose were now distracted, whispering to each other with wide eyes and shocked expressions. Malik made his way to his desk, setting down his bag before glancing at his phone. A company-wide email from the board of directors had just landed in his inbox. He clicked it open. Subject: Leadership Announcement. Effective immediately, CEO Franklin Lattimore has stepped down from his position due to an internal investigation into financial misconduct. The board of directors will be appointing a new CEO to lead Westbridge Tech Solutions into its next chapter. An official announcement will follow shortly. Malik read the email twice, making sure he wasn't imagining things. Lattimore was out. For years, Franklin Lattimore had been the face of Westbridge Tech Solutions, a smooth-talking executive who built the company's reputation on innovation and efficiency. He had also been one of the few senior leaders who recognized Malik's talent. Unlike Richard, Lattimore had actually noticed his contributions, had even pulled him aside once after a presentation to say, "You've got a sharp mind, Malik. Keep doing what you're doing." But now Lattimore was gone, and everything was up in the air. Across the office, Richard Dawson was smirking, clearly enjoying the spectacle. He was already positioning himself in conversations, likely trying to figure out how to benefit from the shift in power. Malik shook his head, turning his attention back to his work. He wasn't going to get caught up in the chaos. He had too much to do. Then, at 10:30 a.m., another email arrived. Emergency all-hands meeting, 11:00 a.m. By the time everyone gathered in the main conference room, tension hung thick in the air. Employees filled the space, whispering amongst themselves. Richard stood near the front, straightening his tie, clearly expecting some sort of promotion. Malik, on the other hand, stood near the back, arms crossed, observing. Finally, a senior board member stepped up to the podium. "Good morning, everyone," she began. "As you all know, Mr. Lattimore has stepped down from his role as CEO. After careful deliberation, the board has selected someone to take his place, someone who embodies the values of hard work, leadership, and innovation that Westbridge Tech Solutions is built upon." Richard shifted forward slightly, preparing to step up. "And that person is—" The board member smiled. "Malik Carter." The room fell into stunned silence. Malik blinked, certain he had misheard. Richard's smirk vanished, replaced by wide-eyed disbelief. "What?" he blurted out before he could stop himself. The board member continued, unfazed. "Malik has been with us for years, delivering consistent results and demonstrating outstanding leadership qualities. His work speaks for itself. We have full confidence that under his guidance, this company will reach even greater heights." A ripple of applause spread through the room. People turned to look at Malik, some clapping, some murmuring in astonishment. Malik felt a rush of emotions: shock, excitement, vindication. Just yesterday, Richard had dismissed him, implying he didn't fit in leadership. Now, he wasn't just in a leadership role, he was at the very top. Richard, on the other hand, looked as if the ground had been ripped out from under him. His mouth opened and closed, struggling to process what had just happened. The same man he had just denied a raise. The same man he had subtly disrespected for years. The same man he had underestimated. And now, that man was his new boss. Malik took a deep breath, straightened his tie, and stepped forward. "Thank you," he said, his voice calm but firm. "I'm honored to take on this role. I look forward to leading Westbridge Tech into the future." The applause grew louder. Malik locked eyes with Richard for a brief moment, and for the first time ever, Richard was the one looking up at him. Richard Dawson sat frozen in his chair long after the announcement ended. The room was still buzzing with excitement, employees whispering amongst themselves, glancing back at Malik Carter. The man they had just learned was their new CEO. Richard, however, wasn't celebrating. His face had gone pale, his mind racing to process the impossible reality. Malik Carter was his boss, the same Malik he had belittled for years. The same Malik he had denied a raise just yesterday. The same Malik he had deemed unfit for leadership. Now, he sat at the head of the table, shaking hands with board members, thanking his colleagues, and exuding a quiet confidence that made Richard's stomach churn. This wasn't supposed to happen. By the time the meeting ended, Richard made a beeline for the door, needing air, needing time to figure out how to salvage his position. But before he could escape, Malik's voice cut through the crowd. "Richard, a moment?" Richard swallowed hard and turned, forcing a smile. "Of course, Malik, I mean Mr. Carter." He corrected himself quickly, his voice coated in forced enthusiasm. "Congratulations, by the way. A well-deserved promotion." Malik studied him, his expression unreadable. "Let's talk in my office." The walk down the hall felt like a death march. Richard had strutted into that very office countless times, knowing he was the one holding all the power. But now? Now, every step felt heavier, every second a reminder that the power dynamic had flipped overnight. Inside the office, Malik gestured for Richard to sit. He, however, remained standing, pacing behind his desk. "I won't waste your time," Malik began, his tone calm but firm. "We both know how you've treated me over the years. The promotions you handed out to less qualified people, the raises you denied me, the dismissive way you spoke to me while taking credit for my ideas." Richard's throat went dry. He opened his mouth to protest but stopped when Malik held up a hand. "I don't need an apology," Malik continued. "I don't expect one either. What I do expect is change." Richard's eyes darted around the room, searching for an angle, a way to spin this in his favor. "Malik, Mr. Carter, listen, I think we got off on the wrong foot. I was just following company policy, making tough decisions as a manager. I always respected your work." Malik chuckled, shaking his head. "Spare me, Richard, we both know that's a lie." Richard's forced smile faltered. "You built your success on keeping people like me out of leadership," Malik said, leaning forward. "But things are different now. I'm in charge, and this company is going to change." Richard stiffened. What? What do you mean?" Malik walked over to his desk and picked up a folder. "Starting today, I'm implementing new policies, fair policies. Promotions and raises will be earned, not handed out based on favoritism." He paused, locking eyes with Richard. "Which means people like you, who have coasted on privilege and connections, are going to have a much harder time staying relevant." Richard clenched his jaw. "You're firing me." Malik exhaled slowly, as if considering the idea. "I could, and let's be honest, you deserve it." Richard gripped the arms of his chair. "Malik, please." "But no," Malik interrupted. "I don't believe in revenge. I believe in accountability." He placed the folder in front of Richard. "I'm demoting you. Effective immediately, you'll no longer be a manager. You'll report to the new head of your department, someone I trust to do the job fairly. You'll have to actually earn your place here, just like everyone else." Richard's face turned red. "You can't do this!" Malik smirked. "I can, and I just did." For the first time, Richard was powerless. As he stormed out of the office, Malik let out a slow breath and turned toward the window, looking out over the city skyline. The days of being overlooked were over. The culture of inequality was over. This was a new era, and he was the one leading it. The office atmosphere had shifted in ways that were almost palpable. The tension that once loomed over Westbridge Tech Solutions, the silent frustrations of overlooked employees, the quiet murmurings of unfair promotions and biased decisions, all of it had begun to disperse under Malik Carter's leadership. Change wasn't just coming, it had arrived. Richard Dawson had spent the first week of Malik's tenure scrambling. He had tried everything, sending congratulatory emails, pretending to be supportive, even trying to rewrite history as if he had always been one of Malik's mentors. But Malik wasn't buying it, and neither was the rest of the company. Under Malik's new policies, promotions and raises were now tied to actual performance. A new review system was implemented, ensuring that meritocracy, not favoritism, determined advancement. Employees who had worked tirelessly for years were finally given the recognition they deserved. Richard, however, quickly found himself floundering. Without his power to manipulate promotions and gatekeep opportunities, he had nothing to stand on. His incompetence became clear. He wasn't a leader, just a beneficiary of a broken system. And Malik made sure he answered to someone who once answered to him. At the next company-wide meeting, Malik stood at the front of the room, his voice calm but resolute. "There will be no place for discrimination, bias, or favoritism here," he announced. "We move forward with fairness, accountability, and respect." He turned his gaze to Richard, who sat stiffly among the employees, no longer in his position of power. "That means everyone, no exceptions. The team erupted into applause, not just for Malik, but for the justice they had long been denied. Richard had been demoted. The man who once dictated Malik's career was now answering to one of the very people he had dismissed in the past, a junior employee turned manager who had been unfairly overlooked for years. Richard fumed in silence, his face red with humiliation. And Malik? He smiled, not out of revenge, but out of justice. With Richard's influence neutralized, Malik focused on real change. He restructured the leadership team, appointing diverse, talented individuals who had long been denied opportunities. He ensured that employee growth was based on skill, dedication, and innovation, not on who you knew or how well you fit into outdated molds. The company flourished. Productivity skyrocketed. Employees thrived under leadership that valued them. The toxic culture of favoritism that Richard had helped cultivate was eradicated, replaced by an environment where everyone had a fair shot at success. And the message was clear. Westbridge Tech Solutions was no longer a place where hard work went unnoticed, especially not because of race. As the day wound down, Malik stood at the floor-to-ceiling window of his corner office, looking over the city skyline. Just weeks ago, he had sat in this very building, being denied a raise by a man who had no respect for his talent. Now, he was the CEO. Not because of luck, not because of favoritism, because he had been more than qualified all along. Because justice always wins in the end. And with that, Malik Carter smiled. He had earned this.